The Abolition News Network, Incorporated, would like to present for the first time the complete illustrations from the 1852 third edition of Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. This group of drawings depicts the most physical and mental cruelty that were present in the southern states in the 19th century, and therefore may be too graphic to show to children. They also may be very disturbing to many adults who are not familiar with slavery as it was practiced in the 19th century. This video is intended for those who have a serious interest in the history of American slavery as it existed in everyday life in the southern states before the Civil War. Harriet Beecher Stowe's characters portrayed in this book were all from real-life actual people. This is explained more thoroughly in Key to Uncle Tom, published in 1853. My name is Uncle Tom. I was a slave in the Old South. This is the story of part of my life until the end. This was our kitchen in Kentucky. This is my wife, Aunt Chloe. This was me playing with my children. The portrait of George Washington is noticeably looking down on this family scene. Frontispiece. Here on this frontispiece, you are informed that there will be 40 illustrations from the 1852 edition of my book depicting every form of cruelty in Negro life in the slave states of America. My story will spare you nothing of the total evil and ungodliness of slavery as practiced in the South. Some additional color drawings from 1852 were also found to fill in some important gaps. I begin my story one morning in Kentucky at Master Shelby's home with our first acquaintance of the visitor, the slave trader, Mr. Haley. He was a short, thick-set man with coarse features and swaggering pretensions who was trying to elbow his way up in the world. He seems to be completing the business of buying me and watching the small quadroon boy do a dance. Fling in this chap and I'll settle the business. His mother Eliza overhears at the door that her little Harry has been sold along with me. The father of the little boy, George Harris, questions, naturally, what made this man my master? We now become acquainted with the word, which will be used throughout my narrative, the article referring to a slave as property, not a human being. This drawing, the buyer and seller of the human article, puts the slave in the classification of a farm animal or a piece of furniture. Death of Carlo. Cruelty also extends to dogs. Carlo, George and Eliza's poor loving creature, was sentenced to his death by the master for the only crime of eating scraps off the kitchen table. He wanted us to tie a stone around his neck and throw him in the pond to drown. Because George couldn't do it, the master and I had to pelt the poor drowning creature to death with stones. Here it says, "Poor thing." He looked at George so mournful, as if he wondered why George didn't save him. Eliza tells her son Harry he was sold and was going to be taken away by a wicked man. But she's not going to let him, and they were going to run off. So the ugly man can't catch him. While Eliza was planning her escape, Sam, one member of the slave family of the Shelby property, distracts the slave trader by sabotaging his horse, placing a sharp beechnut under the saddle, which makes the horse spook, sending Haley sprawling as soon as he touched the saddle. Now, the most famous slave in American history, Eliza, a real slave who escaped in 1834, retold in my book. She leaps onto the broken ice of the swift current of the Ohio River, barefooted, carrying her little boy Harry, with the slave catchers in hot pursuit on the Kentucky shore. This famous engraving is labeled Lizzie's Bridge. The article exhibits the dominion of maternal love. Aunt Chloe describes the scene of the 3 slave catchers, planning what they are going to do next. Don't they tear their sucking baby right off his mother's breast? If the devil don't get him, what's he good for? As I said at the beginning of this narrative, the viewers are not going to be spared anything on the subject of selling slaves. Here a slave catcher remarks, if we could get a breed of gals that didn't care now for their young'uns, would be the greatest modern improvement I knows of. The title of this piece is, The Soul Driver Experiences a Mercantile Drawback. As the article is about to go to heaven prematurely, Eliza, now safely in the home of Senator and Mrs. Bird, tells the family that a mother, such that she represents, is not going to be separated from her only comfort and pride and sell her baby child down south. A baby that had never been away from his mother in his life. Meanwhile, Haley packs me up for the down south market in front of my family, who look on in disbelief.